I think we're going to be able to give you guys quite an interesting discussion on the bonus abuse in casino topic today. I'd like to start just very quickly. My name is Simon. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Fast Track. I've been asked to moderate this session today. I've known Ozric for quite some time, and he's quite a figure, at least on the European side, where he's, at least if I say it myself, a huge influencer in terms of knowledge when it comes to this area. And he's done some really exciting research that we are going to share and discuss today in this room. And I think it's going to be an eye-opener for a lot of people in the room as well, in terms of what's happening and what's going on, and hopefully it's going to be quite educational. So, Ozric, tell me, like, we put up a number on the screen right now. So tell me about this number. What are we looking at?
So this is the total amount of value that a single player can take by taking advantage of every welcome offer or acquisition offer in New Jersey. So this is not the headline value, but the value that a player can actually convert after completing the terms and conditions or wagering requirements associated with that offer. So that's just one player, and it would take them around a week with no real special skill. And that's from a total of 36 operators. And sort of where there's sport offers available and casino offers, usually you can only pick between the two. So this is taking the highest value available offer for each operator as well. So it's broken down into sport, which is 7,593, and casino, which is 14,862. Obviously, the best from each has been taken there. So this is playing the offer within the terms as intended as well. So I'm used to the European market where there's quite sophisticated strategies used to optimize this value. There's issues in the US as well, such as double dipping, which is crossing state lines to take advantage of a single offer multiple times. But there's also ways, usually, of manipulating bonus engine logics to convert cash outside of wagering requirements, sort of undermining them. And then there's consumption order abuse, Dutching, collusion, so Dutching offers against each other, which increases the average value. So there's many ways of increasing this number, as well as kind of what I'm saying.
And I mean, it's quite a huge number. I don't know. It would be nice to put that maybe in context. I don't know. Like in itself, it's a huge number. You take one person going through all of the welcome offers, and 18,500 is obviously quite substantial. Give us a little bit of context. How does that compare to other markets?
So the UK is the best example. I mean, it's the market that I'm most familiar with as well, but the UK has the highest concentration of people exploiting offers, essentially. Right. The value in the UK is £2,412, which is around $3,000 but that's across 148 offers. So the average per operator is obviously far, far less.
So you said 140 operators in the UK.
148, yeah.
148, and representing to £2,300-ish.
Yeah.
And then comparing that with 30 you said?
36, yeah.
36 on the state side, in New Jersey specifically, and that's 18,500. So that's quite substantial difference.
Yeah. In the UK, sort of going back 15, 20 years, it was a similar story there in terms of the value, and that's kind of decreased over time. But despite that, there's still the highest concentration of bonus abuse in the UK. In fact, it's the most sophisticated country in terms of cheating in the world. But there's over 350,000 paid subscribers to bonus abuse forums there. So they're people that are paying for guides and information and tools to take advantage of promotions, essentially. And they make it super simple, so it's accessible basically to anyone. Like kind of like a get-rich-quick scheme that actually kind of works. So they've seen kind of huge coverage and huge growth over sort of the last 10, 20 years. And there's frequent publicity in the UK. So The Guardian, Vice, The Economist, there's been tons and tons of articles over the years kind of talking about this kind of phenomenon of people being able to like cheat the casino, basically, which is always going to be an interesting topic, right? And there's over 1 million identities in the UK being used for the sole purpose of taking advantage of these offers, which is about 1.5% of the population. So it's a huge pool of identities that's in use proactively. And that's just with permission. Then there's obviously the use of scraped and stolen identities.
In case you're saying that those 1 million, there's essentially people that have sold their identities to or given an opportunity to do it themselves or done it essentially with. Exactly.
There's multi-accounting groups that, I mean, the recruitment used to look more like somebody in a bar offering you like 100 quid to buy your identity for a bit, basically. But it turned into people standing outside of kind of recruitment centres, trying to recruit people, driving instructors recruiting their students. Like, I've spoken to people that have said, like, they were trying to recruit an identity that had already been poached by someone else. Like, it's quite a big thing, but it kind of become more mainstream in that because it's with permission, like, it's a legal grey area. Like, there's no, well, other than the operator, no victim in that it's not a stolen identity. Like, they've given you the permission to use it and play on their behalf. So because confidence grew in this, like, nobody ever was prosecuted. It meant that these things were scaled and recruitment started going online, and now you have massive syndicates that are just recruiting, people they don't know. And some of these multi-accounting groups, they're tens of thousands of identities and have registered companies, and they pay taxes. It's a proper counter industry, like the worth, in excess of £1 billion as a standalone industry. So it's crazy, and there's perpetuation from the exchanges as well. So the betting exchanges they provide a two-way market on every bet, and for people that bet on take advantage of sport offers, they tend to cover all outcomes. So they need to bet against any outcome that they use with an operator, and exchanges provide this functionality. They turn every bet into a two-way market, and typical players don't tend to bet against an outcome. They'll bet on an outcome. So it's kind of counterintuitive for normal players to use an exchange in this way. So these exchanges love bonus abusers, match bettors, because
of course
they provide this liquidity on the opposing side of the market. And so they've somewhat kind of perpetuated the problem, and they offer all of these forums 0% commission to use their services to provide this liquidity. There's like a symbiosis there between the two.
So sort of giving a helping hand almost. Like.
Yeah. And they also raise the profile of match betting and bonus abuse because it's in their interest to generate more liquidity. Yeah, I think that gives you some idea of the state of the UK. Like, it's a problem that they're trying to solve 20 years later still. Like,
it's super interesting. And I mean, if we then glance over and we look at sort of what does this mean in terms of the exposure in the US, and what can we sort of touch on that? What would that, if everything we know about UK right now and how that's evolved over time, where we are in what we can see doing this analysis right now, how that's going to be evolving throughout the US. What's your sort of prediction? What can you tell me about that? Because obviously the betting exchanges haven't made it over here yet, so this is a partial sort of view on everything. So that's another problem potentially, I suppose, as that becomes available. What can you tell us about the US market?
So, I'm not looking at this from a data perspective in terms of what abuse the operators have exposure to, but we've got very good visibility the other side of this. So there's a lot of trends that correlate with what was happening in the UK 15 years ago. It's kind of playing out again. The kind of main subreddit around bonus abuse in the US has 280,000 members already, led by a guy called Dark Horse Odds, who has his own forum that he's now set up in the US. So they're kind of upskilling people, these forums. They're teaching them how to, there's no exchanges yet, but in place of exchanges, they're doing something called Dutching, which is where you cover all the outcomes, and you can kind of put offers against each other. So if you take an offer from one operator and then from another, you can kind of cover both sides of the event and capitalize on both promotions in one hit. And so they're making it as simple as possible for people to go and take advantage of this value. Basically, they're making it accessible. You don't need to be a mathematician or understand probability to be able to do this, right?
Right.
So they're also kind of promoting more advanced techniques, such as traveling across state lines. So there's still quite a few operators that allow you to take the welcome offer in each state. So there's people touring the US, and there's guides on how to do this to go and take, literally rinse each state. So in terms of, the understanding of this abuse, obviously the UK's the level of sophistication is incredibly high now. They're focusing on quite nuanced processes of cheating casino. They've got really inventive. In the US, it's that advancement. We're seeing that advancement grow in the forums, the level of sophistication. But there is already kind of a base knowledge here. There is a well-established kind of group of people, community of people that have been applying the same principles to the grey market, the previous years.
But it's fair to say that given all of the different variables that comes into this right now and the amount of value that is up for grabs, that it's going to go fairly quickly.
Exactly.
And it's already happening, isn't it? Like to quite a degree, as you're saying.
There's huge incentive, and it's a small leap for players to realize they can take this value,
right.
And there's a big incentive to scale it, like making this $18,500. If somebody's to take this and realize, it took me a week to do that, I'm going to use my brother's, sister's, cousin's identity, and it escalates, right? But we've seen I was talking about the UK and all the publicity that it got. Bloomberg just did an article following an individual person that was able to take $37,000 from operators. So that they included some retention value as well. So, it is there. It is gaining traction. We've seen the exchanges now, trying to move into the US. There's some kind of barriers in terms of the cross-border liquidity, but it seems like they're finding solutions to this. And that's going to perpetuate the problem as well, in the same way it did in the UK. It's going to tie into the abuse forums with the zero commission. They're going to promote media attention. And we're seeing people scaling it. So we, in our line of work, we get a lot of people contact us, and we've spoken to some of the syndicate, like multi-accounting groups in the US that have kind of tipped us off that they're touring university campuses, paying, like $1,000 per identity because they can afford to, but also the value is kind of irrelevant when you can scale the process an indefinite amount or an infinite amount. Yeah.
So how what impact is that going to have on the US operators?
So in the UK, the reaction to this in the UK was to increase the terms and conditions generally. Everyone wants a large headline offer. And so when you're trying to reduce the value, the kind of next step is to apply higher wagering requirements or win caps or max stake sizes, restricted content or whatever that may be.
And where are we with that in the US if you're looking at the bonuses right now around the value that we're looking at the screen, for example?
In the US, like the wagering requirements typically like 1 to 5 times turnover.
Which is unheard of on a UK, in a bonus in anywhere in Europe.
To me, it's crazy, but not to say that that's like not the right thing to do. I mean, it's a much better player experience. The problem is that in the UK, you can't look at an offer and say that's worth value to me as a player,
right?
Because it's shrouded in these terms and conditions. You need a Monte Carlo simulation to determine the value of that offer. Whereas in the US, you can look at an offer and say, a 100% deposit up to $1,000 with 1 time sterling, like, that has a positive value to me. Like, and even if you don't make that connection, when you play it and win, it's a very small leap to realize you can go and do that with every operator.
Yeah,
like,
of course.
I think that's a huge problem. I think it's very possible that that's what's occurring. That the players are leaping from one offer to the next, and that it's the right environment to manufacture this as a problem. Like it's certainly what happened in the UK anyway.
So a prediction, essentially in summary, is that what we saw happening in the European space, or at least in the UK, was that the terms and conditions around the bonuses started becoming a bit tighter over time. And now it's reasonable to say that that is probably something that is going to happen in the US as well over time, because you don't want to lose the sort of value of advertising a huge bonus to the player, because you don't want to lose out on sort of positioning value, if you want.
Operators tend to want to be at the top of the affiliate list, right? The biggest value. So I think that possibly would be, what happens in the US. But I also think it's a bit of a shame, because there's an opportunity to jump the gun here and focus on both user experience and value, by focusing on the player. The better understanding you have of the player, the less you have to have blanket terms, right?
Yeah.
And I think a general transition towards retention as well. Like, you don't have to give all of your value up front. There's other ways of having a competitive.
Yeah, so you're stepping onto a little bit like sort of what advice could be given out to operators in the US right now. You're talking about sort of retention and other things in terms of experience, but we have a couple of minutes left. Like, what can you share in terms of your own advice towards like operators in terms of tackling this? So
it's kind of, the US seems to have like a 2-part marketing strategy, focus on acquisitions, and then see long-term returns later on.
Right.
I do think there is, in terms of risk exposure, the market's quite vulnerable in that unless there's good analysis on those players, it could be the case that every operator is sharing the same pool of players, players with all the operators, and it poses a risk to that long-term return on investment, potentially. So my kind of, advice, thoughts, is that there should be strong focus on retention at this point,
right,
and focus on individual player behaviour. So focus on retaining them, but also focus on ensuring that they're the players that you want, that they represent a positive long-term value to you as an operator.
So you're essentially like find some mechanic in order to identify who to invest in long-term, so that you can push that onto the retention.
Exactly. The UK is now, we're seeing operators pop up that, their whole campaign is that they have no wagering requirements, or there's even one casino called No Bonus Casino. Like,
right.
There's like they're finding other ways of engaging their players, whether that's the best odds, or the least restrictions, or the best user experience, or whatever that is. I think there's other kind of compelling ways to draw players. I think there's an opportunity to focus on these other elements, essentially.
Cool. I just wanted to look around and see if there was anyone who might want to ask a question was to have Ozric up here, if there was anything that was on anyone's mind. I can't see any hands right now because we're starting to run out of time. Cool. But anyway, it's a very hot topic. At least it is going to become, because of the aggressiveness of these acquisition offers. There is obviously a lot of value to be up for grabs for anyone and any families, I suppose. And looking after this and methodically sort of address this is something that is going to be a priority, I suppose. It has to be. So I would like to thank Ozric obviously for participating. Thank you very much for that. And yeah, thanks everyone.